Once we learn to both visually recognize and construct intervals, we must learn to mentally hear them and sing them. The musical term for this skill is audiation. Most musicians are able to hear a musical pattern or series of intervals and reproduce it with their studied instrument. It is a bit more difficult, without training, however, for that same musician to simply look at a written pattern of notes and immediately summon mentally an accurate rendition of the tones that they represent. Likewise, it is difficult for a musician, without training, to mentally hear a pattern of tones and immediately translate them to written music. The goal for composers is to read, write, and mentally hear music in the same way that an author reads, writes, and mentally hears words. One example of audiation is as follows. I'll use part of an original composition consisting of 4 measures of its musical introduction. I'm not trying to promote my own music necessarily. It's just easier to avoid copyright infringement when using original material. It will also give you the opportunity to observe one composer's procedure for taking imagined music and communicating it to the outside world. First, I'll tell you that I wrote this introduction rather arbitrarily in the asymmetrical 11/8 time signature. Since we hear beat groupings in sets of 2, 3, or 4, I decided to divide the 11-beat pattern into 2 groups of 4, followed by 1 group of 3. This is how the repeated rhythmic pattern sounded in my head. I heard the following chords and melody in my head and fit them into the 11/8 pattern so as to create a repeating syncopated pattern. I hear the first 4-note phrase being played by the left hand on a piano, with each note being doubled at the octave. I know that the phrase will begin on an F natural because I arbitrarily put this little intro into the Lydian mode. An F Lydian scale uses the key signature for C major, so I don't have to keep track of sharps or flats, which keeps it simple for me. The first 4 notes, as I listen in my mind, consist of an F stepping up by a major second to a G natural, stepping up again by a major second to an A natural, and falling a perfect fourth to an E natural. Immediately following this 4-note phrase, I hear a short and staccato chord. In order to find the individual notes of this chord, I arpeggiate the chord in my mind. Comparing those arpeggiated notes to my E natural, I determine that they consist of a G natural, an F natural, a B natural, and an A natural. I count the number of 8th rests before the next chord is struck and determine that there are 3. I hear and arpeggiate the next chord, and comparing the notes to the previous G natural, I determine that this chord is a B diminished triad made up of a D natural, a B natural, and an F natural. Listening to and arpeggiating the next chord in the sequence, I determine that it is a quarter-note G major triad made up of a D natural, B natural, and G natural. Hearing the next chord falling on beat 1 of measure 2, I again arpeggiate it and compare it to the previous G major triad. I determine that it is an F major triad made up of a C natural, an A natural, and an F natural. I count in my mind the number of 8th rests until the next chord occurs. There are 2. The next chord I hear and arpeggiate is an 8th note in duration, and when compared to the previous F major triad, gives me a C major triad consisting of a C natural, a G natural, and an E natural. Arpeggiating and comparing the next chord to the C major triad I hear that it is a quarter note G major triad made up of a B natural, G natural, and D natural. Hearing the next chord, I determine that it is merely a return to an eighth note staccato version of the C major triad I just left. I count the 4 eighth rests to the end of the measure, where I will begin to repeat the pattern. The pattern begins again in measure 3 with a repetition of the 4 eighth notes of F, G, A, and E. Next come 2 eighth note intervals of minor sixth, consisting of a G natural over a B natural, followed by an F natural over an A natural. I count 5 eighth rests to the end of measure 3, followed by 3 eighth rests beginning measure 4 until the next chord is struck. Arpeggiating and comparing this first chord in measure 4 to the previous interval, I hear that it consists of an A natural over a B natural over an A natural. The next chord, when arpeggiated and compared to the previous chord, gives me an E natural over a G natural over an E natural. The final chord in the sequence yields, when arpeggiated and compared, an A minor seventh chord consisting of a C natural over an A natural over a G natural over an E natural over a C natural in the bass. And finally, I count the 5 eighth rests, which brings us to the end of the measure. Another example of audiation occurs when the musician reads a score for the first time and mentally hears it without having a musical instrument present. Let's take the following choral score. In this case, we have a very well-known song. The melody in the top line should be quite familiar to a lot of people. What we are interested in is to mentally hear the arrangement and the supporting chords as they move along with the melody. There are probably a lot of different ways in which a musician could accomplish this, but the easiest way for me will be to determine each of the chords and their particular quality, the chord inversion according to the tone in the melody line, and then by arpeggiating the chord in that inversion. Let's begin with the first chord. Beginning with the sum of somewhere, each voice sings a C natural. The where of somewhere utters a C natural in the top voice, followed by a G natural, E natural, and A natural in each of the voices below it. If we align these notes in their root position, we get an A, C, E, G, which makes an A minor seventh chord. The closest inversion for that chord, having a C natural at the top position, is its second inversion, which gives us the chord shown in the treble clef staff at the bottom of the page. This chord is arpeggiated as C, A, G, E, and sounds like. In the next illustration, we see the lyric Over the Rain made up of a melody line containing a B natural, G natural, A natural, which is actually a passing tone, and a B natural. These tones are supported by a root position chord consisting of E, G, B, D, which makes up an E minor seventh chord. The chord inversion we would use would be its third inversion, which gives us the B, G, E, D shown at the bottom of the page. This chord, when arpeggiated, sounds like. Next, we find that the melody moves up from a B natural to a C natural and is held for a time as indicated by the fermata. Below the C are the tones making up a C dominant seventh chord. In the root position, this chord would be constructed as C, E, G, B flat. Since the C has been placed in the top line, we use the C dominant seventh in its first inversion as shown in the staff at the bottom of the page. Arpeggiating this first inversion chord, we hear Note that the melody now drops an octave to the C natural while being supported by the tones that make up an F major 7th chord, FACE in root position. As depicted at the bottom of the page, this chord is in its second inversion, CAFE, and when arpeggiated, sounds like The next chord shows us a root position D minor 7th chord, which has been inverted to place the A natural in the melody. This D minor 7th, in its third inversion, when arpeggiated, will sound like The final chord of the arrangement shows a return to the E minor 7th chord, but in its second inversion, G, E, D, B. When arpeggiated, we hear Putting all of the arpeggiations together, we get And from this, we can get a very close mental rendition of what the arrangement will sound like in the real world. One training aid we can use to transform tones to written intervals and written intervals to tones is the incipit. Without going into the technical definition of an incipit, let's just say that it's a memory aid consisting of the first few tones of some song, well known to you, that coincides with a particular musical interval. For example, a well-known song might be Ba Ba Black Sheep. The first two tones make up a perfect unison and are written as a pattern of the same two notes. Let's identify then some of the common and not so common songs that can provide incipits for each of the intervals. Keep in mind that these incipits are only suggestions, so if there are songs with which you are more familiar upon which to create your incipit, feel free. Songs beginning with a minor second are somewhat rare. A song that can be associated with a minor second, however, is the theme from the motion picture Jaws. On the other hand, major seconds are abundant in music. A few of the songs commonly used in providing incipits for major seconds are the first two tones of a major scale, Nat King Cole's Unforgettable, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frere Jacques, and many more. Two songs that begin with a minor third are the English traditional Greensleeves and Brahms' Lullaby. Two songs beginning with a major third are When the Saints Go Marching In and the folk traditional Kumbaya. To remember the sound of a perfect fourth, one can use the songs Here Comes the Bride, O Christmas Tree, or Amazing Grace. Although songs beginning with the augmented fourth are scarce, one can hear the sound of it during the beginning of the song Maria from West Side Story and the beginning of the Simpsons theme song. Because of their enharmonic equivalence, these songs will also represent the sound of a diminished fifth. The song most often used to depict the sound of a perfect fifth is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Again, the diminished fifth is enharmonically equivalent to an augmented fourth, and would use the Maria or Simpsons incipit. Two songs that will help you to remember the sound of a minor sixth are the beginnings to Scott Joplin's The Entertainer and the theme from the movie Love Story. A major sixth can be heard during the beginnings of both the television NBC chimes and the Celtic song My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. Another song from West Side Story that will serve as the incipit for a minor seventh is the beginning of the song Somewhere. Like the augmented fourth and diminished fifth, songs beginning with the dissonant major seventh are infrequent. Two songs which do begin with a major seventh however, are Take On Me by the musical group a-ha and the song Bally High from the musical South Pacific. Finally, the sound of a perfect octave is heard during the beginning of Somewhere Over the Rainbow from the movie Wizard of Oz. Keep in mind that you can use any song you like as long as its incipit represents the sound of the interval you're trying to reproduce. Also, some people like to have songs that generate the incipits of the intervals in both the upward and downward direction. For example, a song that starts with a minor third in the upward direction would be the first two notes of Brahms' Lullaby. A song that starts with a minor third in the downward direction would be the first two notes of Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. If you are looking for lists of incipits, they are abundant on the internet. Just type sounds of musical intervals into any search engine. The final piece of information that I want to present is that of interval inversion, or taking the bottom note of an interval and moving it to the top position. Inversions can be done melodically or harmonically, and always involve moving the bottom note of an interval one octave higher while leaving the other note in its original position. As an example, we show here, in its original position, a C to D major second where the bottom note is a C natural. To make the inversion, we move the C natural from the bottom position below the D natural one octave higher to a position above the D natural. Whenever we invert an interval, the original interval number, whether a unison, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, or octave, when added with its inverted number, will always equal 9. Thus, a unison, or 1, will become an octave, or 8, upon inversion. A second will become a seventh, a third will become a sixth, a fourth will become a fifth will become a fourth, a sixth will become a third, a seventh will become a second, and an octave will become a unison. Finally, whenever we invert an interval, its quality, major, minor, perfect, diminished, or augmented, will always change according to a fixed pattern. That pattern is as follows. A major will become a minor upon inversion. A minor will become a major upon inversion. A perfect interval will remain perfect upon inversion. An augmented will become diminished upon inversion, and a diminished will become augmented upon inversion. Thus, our major second becomes a minor seventh upon inversion. A minor sixth will become a major third. A perfect fifth will become a perfect fourth, and vice versa. An augmented fourth will become a diminished fifth on inversion, and a diminished fifth will become an augmented fourth. This concludes our discussions of intervals. In our next lesson, we can begin to discuss basic triads and their construction within the various keys.